the start the recording. Hi, good morning, afternoon. Sorry, good afternoon, everyone. I am Lindsay Narodka, and I am the Chief Sustainability Officer for the Village of Oak Park. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today to come learn a little bit more about our benchmarking ordinance and how to collect the data and what data you need to collect to be in compliance. And we have Midwest Energy Alliance and Illinois Green Alliance here to offer their expert advice and guidance on how to do that. So just a quick brief introduction about the Village of Oak Park's benchmarking ordinance. This was passed in February of 2023, and it applies to buildings over 10,000 square feet and requires that they report energy and water usage through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager system. And this is our second year. And so if you haven't already reported for 2022, 2022 and 2023 will be due December 31st of this year. And in all future years, December 31st is the deadline for the previous calendar year's data. So December 31st, 2025 is when you'll report your 2024 data. You don't have to wait until the end of 2024 to do that. You can be entering that into Energy Star Portfolio Manager throughout the year. So one question that I get quite frequently is, why do we have this benchmarking ordinance? And so the Village of Oak Park has our Climate Ready Oak Park action plan. And in this plan, we've made several commitments, including the commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. In order to reach that goal, we need to address energy use in buildings because our building energy use is over 70% of our measured greenhouse gas emissions. Benchmarking policies are one that is used nationally as a best practice to engage existing buildings in energy efficiency actions. So we're not just doing it to give you extra work to do. We do recognize that there is a time commitment associated with this, especially if it's your first year reporting. So this policy does have benefits for our building owners as well. Benchmarking allows a building manager to compare their building's performance to other similar buildings and recognize that there's opportunities to increase performance and reduce utility bills. It also helps to track progress if you are making investments into your buildings to see, what the impacts of those are on utility bills and energy or water usage. So even just the act of benchmarking, because we can't manage what we don't measure. Just this act of benchmarking, on average, saves buildings 2.4% in their utility costs. And then for high performing buildings, the Energy Star Portfolio Manager is the basis of the Energy Star score, and Energy Star certified buildings see additional benefits in terms of higher rent premiums, better occupancy rates, and higher resale values. A few things that are new this year, if you reported in 2022, in 2023, reporting properties will get a scorecard. So you can use this, especially if you get a scorecard that shows your building is very high performing. You can use that to market to potential tenants that their utility bills will be low in your building. We also will have, for the first time this year, a map available on our website that will show the buildings that are covered by this policy and those that are reporting and the scores or energy performance that they are achieving. We also have lots of help for you to be able to accomplish these goals and meet these requirements, these data jams being kind of the first step for that. This meeting is being recorded. Those recordings will be available on our help desk. I'll put this link as well in the chat here in a moment. So there's more information online about our benchmarking policy, links to the workshops, and guidance on how to gather and how to report the data. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Katie now. And I will.
Awesome. Thanks,
All right, stop sharing my screen. There you go.
And hopefully I am now sharing my screen. Yeah? Excellent. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Katie Klusny. I'm the Deputy Director at the Illinois Green Alliance and working on a project called the Building Energy Resource Hub, where we're helping buildings with ordinances like these and understanding how to understand their energy use and benchmark. So I'm going to talk you through just a little bit about benchmarking, which Lindsay shared already. I'm going to share a little bit more about what the data jam is to expect in 2 weeks, which hopefully folks on the line are planning to attend, what you need to bring, the necessary data to collect and bring, and that's what we'll spend the most time on today. And then I will stay on the webinar afterwards for any specific questions that people have about their property in particular. We're going to focus today on multifamily buildings, so hopefully most people here are here with a multifamily property today. But we did a commercial property recording yesterday. So if you're on here and there's a property type that we don't hit, we'll make sure to send you the link to the others as well, or I can answer questions about your building type at the end. As Lindsay mentioned, you can't manage what you don't measure. And so this is the first step in doing that. And to make sure that we're measuring things correctly so that you can manage things correctly, we need to get all the aspects of your building's characteristics and data correctly entered in Portfolio Manager so that it's accurately reflecting the energy use per square foot within your building. There are a lot of ordinances besides Oak Parks. They're all over the Midwest here. And so you're in good company of some cities that are also doing this. And we're taking some best practices that people have learned elsewhere in order to make sure that we're giving the right resources for you here today. So what is a data jam? It is an event to help put your building into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, ESPM. Today, we're doing a prep session to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful at the data jam, which is an in-person help session where you're matched one-on-one with someone to help make sure you know how to enter the data correctly. You can answer or get any questions answered along the way. You'll learn how to use the software so you're familiar with it and comfortable with using it on your own. And then hopefully at the end of the data jam, you leave with most of the heavy lifting of benchmarking completed and submitted to the Village of Oak Park, or you know exactly what else is needed for next steps to be finishing up that process and some resources for folks to help you if you have questions after the data jam. What you'll need to bring is a laptop, something that helps you log in and be able to work on your property yourself at the data jam itself. You'll bring your building characteristic information, which we're going to talk through here next. 1 year of utility and water data, so electricity, natural gas, and water data. Or if this is your first year benchmarking, you'll also gather 2022 data. And so you might bring 2 years of utility data. And yourself and anyone else on your team that you want to work with on this project. So you don't have to be the only one that knows how to do this. Anyone at your building or your property or connected to the building management can learn how to use Portfolio Manager, set up an account, and all work on the same building property together. So the first thing we're going to jump into is the data characteristics of your building. The first questions when you're setting up a Portfolio Manager account for your building is going to ask everybody the same things. You need to set up a name for your building, and you set up a name that everybody at your building recognizes in case you aren't the one doing this in the future. You want to make sure that that property can be shared with others so they don't have to start over. The property address. Putting in the property address helps Energy Star Portfolio Manager know where you are in the US because climate data and weather data is connected in with your energy data. So a property that is performing in Oak Park is going to have different weather than a property performing in Arizona. And so a Portfolio Manager takes into effect the weather data for the year over the utility data that you're entering. The next thing is the gross floor area of the property. And this is a kind of tricky one to find if you don't have access to this readily. You might have to look at original building drawings or plat of survey or do a calculation through a mapping software. But this is not the leasable or rentable space within the building, but actual total square footage that's inside conditioned space within the building. So wall to wall, ceiling to basement, what is the gross floor area of space that's using energy, including common areas? They're also going to ask about the percentage of irrigated area or the square footage of irrigated area. This gets to the water use question. When you're entering your water data, it's going to ask you if there's outdoor potable water use, and you want to know how much of the space is being irrigated. If you don't have any, you just put 0 here. The year that the building was built, just to get an understanding of the age of the building. There'll be some different occupancy questions depending on the building type that you're using, but it'll ask about percentage occupied here on the main page. So like 90% occupied. What was the average over the year? 100% occupied, 95% occupied. So this is going to ask a percentage. And then it'll also ask you if there's more than one building that are connected and using the same energy systems, or if it's just one single building. And then you're going to look for 12 months of consecutive months of energy data. So you do need data that spans January 1st through December 31st. We'll talk about utility data in a little bit later, but it does need to have a full calendar year of data for Energy Star to give you a calculation. So I've added this in here because Portfolio Manager has actually 80 different primary use types that you can select to start. And they also have a huge definitions list where you can look up what all these different property types mean. For this webinar, we're talking most about multifamily housing. And so you'll scroll down the list and find multifamily housing, which is under lodging and residential. There's a bunch of different categories and then subcategories. But again, you can click on the glossary to just make sure you're picking the right thing. Each of these building types has different, some very similar ways that are used. So a K-12 school, if you selected that, it's going to assume that there's classrooms and an office and probably a gym or things like that. Similar with multifamily housing, you don't have to separate out all the different spaces, like if there's a property maintenance office or if there's a common area in the lobby. It assumes that most residential buildings have those types of spaces, but it will ask you different questions, like if there's a swimming pool or something unusual that might be unique to your building, it'll call out and ask those questions. But this is where you start and you pick your primary use type here. And this is what it looks like when you're entering those pieces of data that I mentioned earlier. So you're entering the property name. All of these have red asterisks next to them, which means that you need to know all this information to be able to move on to the next page. So I say that because it's really great to collect that data up front, and we'll send you some data collection worksheets after this webinar. But you might not be something you have at your fingertips. So collecting this all in advance so that when you sit down in Portfolio Manager and get started, you have all of the information that you need to keep moving on to the next pages. And then once you've set up the main characteristics of the building as a whole, if it's a multifamily housing building, which there are many in Oak Park, it's going to take you to a next page, which is going to ask some really specific things about your multifamily property. And everything on Portfolio Manager, it has a lot of things have a blue link. And so if you hover over or click the blue link, it'll take you and open a new tab for a glossary page that it's going to explain what does Portfolio Manager mean by that. It may not be the same definition of everything that you think of, but Portfolio Manager has a way that they think about these things. I'm going to show you actually, I'll come back to this, but on the next slide, if you clicked on one of these links, it does take you to this glossary page. And so here's, the definitions that go with all of the things on the previous slide. So what you need to find here when you're collecting your data to be ready for the data jam is the gross floor area of the multifamily space. So if you have retail or restaurant or something different at the base of the building, you'll want to subtract out that square footage from the multifamily housing type. If the whole building is multifamily housing, you're going to use the same gross floor area that you entered in the very first page, the total area of the building. The next thing it's going to ask is the total number of residential living units. And that means how many units are in the building. It's a pretty easy question, but there's a harder one in a minute. So this is how many units are in the building. So where people are living. And this is trying to get a better idea of energy use, but also how many people might be using energy in the building. And then there's a series of 3 questions asking really about whether the building is a low-rise, mid-rise, or high-rise building. This looks confusing, and a lot of people get this entered incorrectly when they're using Portfolio Manager for the first time. But really, Portfolio Manager wants to know if your building is short, medium, or really tall. And so if you have 50 total residential living units and your building is 4 stories tall, then you're going to put 50 units in that first line under low-rise building 1 to 4 stories. And then in the next 2, you're going to put 0 and 0 because your building isn't 5 to 9 or 10 or more stories. If you have 65 units and your building is 7 stories, you're going to put all 65 units in that 5 to 9 stories size building. You're not going to break out how many units are in the 1st to 4th floor. So you're going to have 0, then 65 units, and then 0 again. So again, it's not trying to make you break it out into how many units are on each floor. It really just wants to know how tall your building is. And it's just a really funny way for asking that question. Then number of bedrooms. So this is really getting at occupancy a little bit further without you having to know how many occupants are in the building. So if you have 50 units and they're all studios or they're all 1 bedrooms, then this number for number of bedrooms is going to be the same number. But if you have a number of 2-bedroom units or 3-bedroom units in addition to studios or 1 bedrooms, you have to add all of that up. And so if you have 10 3-bedroom units, then you've got 30 bedrooms, plus however many 1-bedroom units as well. So hopefully that makes sense. But again, the definition is on the next page. And then it asks some additional questions that will help you get a better understanding of the energy use of your building, but aren't necessarily required to calculate a score, an Energy Star. But there is a question about whether the building has a common entrance. So if it's 1 door that everyone's going in and out of, and then interior corridors, versus people being able to access their unit all from doors that go to the outside. The residential population type, there's a drop-down list here with some choices, and also a question about government subsidized housing. And then the next questions are about laundry hookups. So Energy Star is trying to get at kind of how the bigger things that use energy within a building. So is there laundry hookups in all of the units? Are there also laundry hookups in the common areas? Are there only laundry hookups in the common areas? So you might put 0 if there's none in the units, and then 5 if there are in the common areas. And then percentage that can be heated and percentage that can be cooled. Likely this will be 100% for both of these. But if you have any unconditioned space, like basement or other items where our attic space that wouldn't be conditioned, then it might be a little bit less percentage. And as I mentioned, this is the definition list. So you'll see it's in alphabetical order. So after total number of residential living units, it talks about what the multifamily housing, it talks about this information that I was just sharing about the low rise, mid rise, high rise. It also explains senior living communities, which I'll talk about next. But then the definition page is really long. So then it's going to go next to total number of weekly ice resurfacing for all ice rinks. You probably don't have an ice rink, but that's the next definition in the glossary, if you were curious. I'm going to share the senior living community example just because it's a little bit different than the multifamily housing. So you'll want to call this one out separately if you're selecting a primary use type and fill out this data collection sheet differently. And the reason is because there's more things that might be using energy in a senior living community building than just a regular multifamily housing. This might include the maximum resident capacity, if there's workers, like number of workers on the main shift. So if it's, assisted living with nursing staff, the number of computers, because there's likely office area or more significant office area than a regular multifamily building. And then also if there's residential washing machines or commercial washing machines within the building as well. There's questions about electronic lift systems, commercial refrigerators and freezers, depending on if you're in a place that is a senior living community that makes and serves food on site for all residents. So again, this is just a little bit different than multifamily because it's trying to capture all of the different ways that this building might use energy differently.
Katie, I just want to stop. I just gotta notice that the meeting's going to end in 10 minutes. Like I
Oh,
said, we had this weird Zoom transition happen yesterday, and evidently
oh,
it's
right.
not, I don't get the unlimited time anymore. Um, so I don't know how you want to approach that. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna power through collecting energy data.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you for letting me know. I'll keep my eye on the time. Um, so accessing energy and water data. So once you've collected all of the information about your building, you're going to have all that on your worksheets and set it aside. If you get really excited about Portfolio Manager and you don't think you need to come to the data jam anymore because you're like, I get it, I know how it works, you can go ahead and start entering things. But if not, bring all of that with you. And then you're going to want to access energy and water data. So if you're in a multifamily building, you likely don't have access to all of the bills of every resident in your building. That would be unusual, unless you pay for every tenant's utilities and then prorate that back to them in some sort of lease. If you have access to the whole building energy usage for the building, then you can just use bills and find the last 12 months or the last 24 months of bills for the building and enter those manually into Portfolio Manager. But most likely that you don't. And so the way that you can do that is by requesting whole building aggregated data from the utilities. So I'm going to talk about how to collect 12 months of water use, 12 months of electricity use from ComEd, and 12 months of natural gas use from NICOR. The ComEd has a system called the Energy Usage Data System, or EUDS. The Energy Usage Data System allows you to create an account with ComEd to request the whole building usage. So you're not logging into your normal ComEd account because that's only going to show you the bills that you pay for at your building, which are likely just the common areas of the building. But you'll use that information on this enrollment form to access whole building data. And you'll be able to get aggregated and anonymized data for your whole building and be able to enter that then into Portfolio Manager. The way you do that is you fill out an enrollment form that's on this main page. You will email the enrollment form to ComEd on the email address that's on the main page, and then you'll receive a login email to your new account within 48 to 72 hours. You need to click the login link within 7 days to activate that account. Otherwise, you have to start the process over. And then there's a really extensive PDF guide under this additional resources part of the page where it walks you screenshot by screenshot onto how to request your data and set that up once you're logged into your account. We'll spend more time on that at the Data Jam. As long as you have access to the link and you click the link to activate your account before coming to the Data Jam, we can walk you through the rest during that day as well. This is what the enrollment form looks like once you've downloaded it. It has some information where you have to put in your company name, if you have a ComEd account manager. If you don't, you just leave it blank. And then you're going to add information about the building, the main address of the building that you're trying to receive access for. For NICOR, it's a little bit different of a system. It's a more manual process than creating a new account. So you complete a spreadsheet, which I'm going to show you on the next slide, that's really collecting all of the meter numbers that are associated with your building. So you may have to find where the meters are on the natural gas line that comes into the building, or if there's more than one spot where natural gas lines come into the building, finding those two areas, writing down the meter numbers for the building, and then sending those in a spreadsheet to NICOR at the email address on this slide, and then sending them in an email saying that you're requesting whole building aggregated data in accordance with Oak Park's mandatory energy benchmarking ordinance. It may take a little bit longer to get this back than the 48 to 72 hours that I mentioned for ComEd. So I recommend doing this as soon as possible if you want to have the data received and available to work on at the Data Jam. If you don't get it by the Data Jam, we can still show you how to do it once you receive it or follow up with you later on how to do that. This is what the spreadsheet looks like. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And you're just putting like who you are, your name, your number, your address, what the property address is, and then the tenant unit number and meter number. Really, you really only need the meter numbers to be honest, to be able to move this forward. So if you don't have every tenant name and unit number that goes with the meter number. That's fine as long as you can fill out the meter numbers for sure. And then to retrieve the water usage data, you're going to request that from the billing department with Oak Park, the water billing department. So you can email or call this phone number. You're going to let them know that you're trying to comply with the ordinance. You need whole building usage data. I think that water might be billed quarterly in Oak Park, and so you might end up with 4 numbers for the year. And in that case, you still are collecting it from January to December, but you might not have 12 numbers on your bill. You might just have a lesser amount. And then if you get really excited and you have collected all your energy data, your water data, your building characteristics, and you want to set up a portfolio manager account before arriving at the data jam, you can do that, and it will actually move the process along quicker because you have to get a confirmation email and start your account. So you can go to portfoliomanager.energystar.gov, and then on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see where I have circled. You can create a new account or log in if you already have one. Once you log in, you're creating your personal account. So you're putting in a username for yourself, a password for yourself, what your name is, your information. You're going to enter your building information later. Anyone at your building can create a portfolio manager account and have their own username and password. And then you can share your building profile amongst yourselves without having to duplicate building information. So if you have another person you're working with, you can set up this account. Once you put in all this information, it's going to send you an email to verify your account. And you just, again, click that to be able to then log in to Portfolio Manager. Once you're logged in, this is kind of the main screen that you'll see. And during the data jam, we're going to spend time on this add a property piece, which is adding your property, entering the data characteristics, the utility information, and getting that all set up. During the data jam too, I'll also show you that sharing tab, how you share with the Village of Oak Park, how you can share data with ComEd if you want it to stream back and forth from ComEd, and also how to share with colleagues and coworkers if you're working on this together. And as Lindsay mentioned before, the Oak Park has a building help desk. And if you have any issues collecting data from the water department or get stuck in a process, you can see over on the left-hand side, it says new ticket. You can create a new ticket and make that request and ask for assistance. And then the staff at Oak Park is able to track those tickets and get those managed really easily. And as Lindsay mentioned, also, there's all the information about how to report, all of the things that I just mentioned about collecting data from the water, gas, and electric utility are on the how to report tab as well. So you can follow those instructions there also. So just in summary, what you need to bring is a laptop, your building information on your data collection sheets, that 1 year or 2 years if you're doing it for the first time of the energy data, and yourself. And we will have fun at a data jam on November 7th, I believe. And then if you have questions in the meantime, Lindsay, myself, or Maddie Lippitt from Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, we're all available to help answer your questions. And I think I might have 1 minute to spare. I don't know, but hopefully that got it all in for the recording. Thank you guys for attending.